I never thought that the guy who allegedly, that's what he says, the guy who shot Osama bin Laden would then use his later career to target me. By the way, I didn't know what concubine meant when he said it. I was like, what is that? I had to look it up and I was disgusted. I was baffled at what I was reading. Very, very strange.
Hey guys, buckle up for a wild ride, because for this week's interview, I have the one and only TikTok star Harry Sisson, the liberal and Democrat ally who's made quite a name for himself on social media over the last few years. We talk about him recently being targeted by Trump and MAGA in some unusual ways. Plus, I challenge him on some of the identity politics stuff he's been involved with in the past. Think white dudes for Kamala, and on his record on defending Biden's age and cognitive decline. Take a listen, like, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. Let me know what you think of our conversation in the comments and who you want to see me chat with next. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Harry, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, man. We've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad I finally got my stuff together and made it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You're a busy guy, but this week of all weeks is a great week to chat with you because people may have missed it if they're not paying close attention, but the President of the United States just tweeted a video shitting on you, literally.
Yeah, that did happen. It's still kind of weird to hear that sentence out loud. It's not something I really ever thought somebody would be saying to me in like a serious way, as a matter of fact. But here we are. This is America in 2025.
Yeah. For context, guys, Trump posted an AI video of him flying an airplane, dumping sewage or feces onto No King's Day protesters. And then one of them was obviously meant to be Harry here. Now, I'm kind of curious about this. Do you think that Trump knows who you are and did that intentionally? Or is it just that like some MAGA person made that AI slop intentionally about you and then he just reposted it without really thinking about you? What's your theory?
Yeah, I mean, we've been having that debate kind of behind the scenes, my friends and I, as to like what exactly happened here. I think the two leading theories are, yeah, I mean, like maybe he saw the video, or maybe he just thought it was funny and kind of uploaded it. Or on the other hand, maybe it was like an aide that showed him the video and he liked it and just uploaded it. As to like whether he knows who I am, I don't know. I have no idea. I can't even guess about that. I just think that those two things are probably the most likely, that, you know, he either just thought it was funny or like an aide showed him the video.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting that you're not relevant, more so that Trump mainly watches old school media. So he watches Fox, right, CNN, MSNBC. He is not hip on the podcasters and TikTok stars and all that. But like the humor side of it, let's just get personal for a second. Tell me about, my first thought was like, imagine being Harry Sisson's mom right now and you turn on the TV and you just see, oh, breaking news, Trump posted video depicting him dumping feces on Harry Sisson. Like, how did your family find out about this? What has it been like personally to just wake up one day and have this happen?
Yeah, I think the first emotion I had was just disbelief. I was watching college football. It was like Alabama, Tennessee playing that night. It was No King's Day. And I had a friend of mine send me the link to the video from his Truth Social page and said, I think this is you in the video. And without even clicking on the link, I was just looking at it and I was thinking, no way. Like, look, Trump is crazy. He posts weird stuff online all the time. But like, this is the President of the United States. He's not posting me on his page. Click to find out. And it is me in his video. He used a photo that I took from No Kings in that video. And it was there. And so my immediate reaction was just disbelief. I had to watch it a few times to properly process what I had just seen. And as to my family and friends, they kind of found out in a similar way that I did. They just like came across it on social media or had somebody send it to them. And I can assure you my family was not happy about it, but they've learned to roll with the punches like I have through all of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of ways to look about it. When I talked about this on my podcast, what I said was, if this was just a video that somebody had shared around the internet, like my MAGA in-laws or something like that, that'd be one thing. And like, politics is not nice these days. So I would not be clutching my pearls if I just saw Cat Turd posting this. Unfortunately, totally. I'd be like, all right, day that ends in Y, right? But the fact that the President of the United States is posting videos that show him pouring feces on his constituents, even if most of them are liberal, even if they're protesting him. I I know that we're desensitized to Trump. A lot of people, especially on the right-leaning side, just view anything he does as a joke. But like that's
Mm.
pretty fucked up. And if any other president did that, that'd be like a presidency defining scandal.
Yeah, I mean, Fox News still brings up Hillary Clinton calling the Trump supporters a basket of deplorables. They're still pearl clutching about that and very offended about that. And yet, when the president is shitting on me, millions of other Americans, and the American flag in that video, might I add, you have Fox News not even really covering the story. You have Mike Johnson saying that Donald Trump is one of the best users of social media of all time, and he's making a point using satire. What point he was trying to make, I don't know, with the feces. But yeah, I mean, it's just everybody kind of accepts it as Trump. But if it were anybody else, they'd have a meltdown. Look at Obama tan suit gate, Obama Dijon mustard, or even when he wore a helmet when he was riding a bike. Sean Hannity hated that one. So I don't know. It's crazy that this is even like the new normal. And I think you're right that that's a video I would have expected to see in my Twitter replies, not coming from the president.
Yeah, and what's interesting is MAGA people online. So like lots of people who voted for Trump watch my podcast. I have loved ones and they are normal people, right? But online MAGA influencers can be kind of crazy and they seem obsessed with you to this point of I want to bring this up. I remember when this happened. This is a headline from the Huffington Post. Navy SEAL says group of male Gen Z Harris voters would be his quote concubines. So you posted a picture with a couple other influencers. I see Harry, I see you, I see Chris, I see Parker and Dean. We're Gen Z voters and we all proudly voted for Kamala Harris. Real men support Harris. Okay, like normal political fodder, right? This guy, Robert J. O'Neill, he was a Fox News contributor for many years, was a Navy SEAL. He went viral because he tweeted, "You're not men, your boys. If there was no social media, you would be my concubines." What the hell happened with that? And why are they all so obsessed with you in a weird, vaguely sexual way?
Yeah, that's such a good question. One that I'm still trying to figure out. So on the Robert O'Neill post, I never thought that the guy who allegedly, that's what he says, the guy who shot Osama bin Laden would then use his later career to target me and my peers at the time in a post. And by the way, I didn't know what concubine meant when he said it. I was like, what is that? I had to look it up and I was disgusted. I was baffled at what I was reading. It's a sex slave. That's what I came to learn. Very, very strange. But in terms of the hate, yeah, I don't know. A lot of the hate is also very sexual. Again, referencing my Twitter replies, you'll see these like AI photos, even amplified by some of the biggest MAGA influencers of me with other men or me in like leatherware. And I always look at that. I'm like, do you have something to share? Or is there, we love you all the same. Love is love, but what's going on here? This is a little like, I don't have any photos of MAGA influencers doing stuff like that. It's very peculiar to me. So why they hate me, I don't know, but I welcome the hate. I love it.
Well,
actually,
to be fair, I think you do post in an intentionally antagonistic way towards MAGA. You would acknowledge that.
I think on Twitter, yeah,
Yeah.
because I think Twitter is just like the worst platform of them all. And it really and I think you and I have even talked about this, it's become like a MAGA hellscape where it really just has been taken over by the craziest of the crazies. And so it's not something I take all that seriously. And I do enjoy the occasional rage bait, I will admit.
You still get millions and millions of views on everything that they love you. Like they really do. They pay you so much attention. And it is interesting to me because you're a straight guy. These are ostensibly straight, middle-aged men with wives and children, but their obsession with you often does descend into like Harry and his boyfriend or like immediately jumping towards something gay related. It is very Freudian. But I want to ask you about this because this is actually wild to me. You trended just a few days ago on X because MAGA influencers got it to be the number one trend on politics, deport Harry Sisson. Even
Yeah.
though you are in fact a U.S. citizen by birth, you were just born overseas. Explain what happened here.
Yeah, so just for some brief context, I was born in Singapore. I have no connection to Singapore other than my parents were working there at the time, and that's why I was born there. They're American citizens. They grew up in Pennsylvania, New York. And I lived in Singapore for less than a year. Then I moved to Dubai for 5 years, and I don't remember any of this, obviously. I was a little kid. And then from around age 6 to age 14, I lived in Dublin, Ireland, then moved back to the United States. But MAGA just hears Harry Sisson was born in Singapore, and they're like, oh, well, he's not American. He must be here on a visa or something like that. They were tagging Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth. I don't know why Pete Hegseth would be part of it, but Marco Rubio and these guys to revoke my visa. And the fact of the matter is, I am an American citizen, at least as the case law stands. I could theoretically run for president of the United States if I wanted to when I got to that age. But yeah, they just see that one fact about me being born abroad, and they think I'm not American. And my response to them is like, okay, well, if we're deporting me, we got to deport everybody in the Republican Party who found themselves in a similar situation. Ted Cruz was born in Canada, so we're gonna send him back to Canada as well as me to Singapore. I don't know. They're
Well,
crazy.
it's interesting because if, I don't know, Biden or somebody had even entertained the notion of like deporting Ted Cruz or somebody, that would have been correctly understood as like viciously incompatible with free speech in the First Amendment. Because what they're
Mm.
saying, as far as I'm aware, you've committed no crimes. Even if you were, as a citizen, there's only a very narrow set of circumstances where someone's citizenship could be revoked. And I don't think they apply to you because you were born a U.S. citizen. But regardless, this idea that, oh, well, we don't like what Harry says. So rather than debate him, rather than ignore him, which they seem like physiologically incapable of doing, we're going to try to deport him. This trended on X.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, the mask's off at this point that they never gave a shit about free speech at all.
Yeah,
Some of
I mean,
them.
isn't it some of them for sure? Isn't it remarkable that before the election, one of Trump's key pillars for his campaign was, I'm going to restore free speech. We have Elon Musk here, who's in the process of restoring free speech. That's one of our main goals. And since then, they've done a lot of attacking speech. Their fans have done that. Trump has done that in courts, and especially through this whole immigration system that they've overhauled to be in their image. Yeah, I mean, they don't care about free speech. They never have and never will. They just care about the speech that they like, not necessarily speech that they disagree with.
Well, that's the whole thing about free speech. It has to be across the board. And it's
Yep.
interesting for me as somebody who comes from more of a conservative right-leaning background. The reason I've become so alienated from the modern GOP is because two of the defining issues for me were free speech and capitalism, supporting free market capitalism. And on
Mm.
both counts, the GOP has kind of just run away from those values.
Yeah, I mean, we own 10% of Intel now. Like that to me is not, free market
Not giving
capitalism.
capitalists.
No, but Brad, I want to make the offer. If you want to come over to our side, we will welcome you with open arms. We
Oh
will make
no,
you
no,
a
no,
Democratic
no. We'll get
voter,
into
and
that.
we'll have a great time. Yeah.
We
No,
will
but
get
I
into
agree with
that,
what you're
but
saying. Yeah.
the Democratic Party is not a home for me either, and I'm just happy to be an
Ugh.
independent. Also, because what I do is commentary and content creation and journalism, I don't really feel the need to like be in a political party anyway. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be running for office. I don't support candidates for office. Like I comment on news stories and do interviews and create content. So I think it's better to be independent anyway. Now the thing that I've had a couple of my Democratic political friends, kind of people in your sphere, ask me about is I voted for the Libertarian Party candidate, and I have
Ugh.
actually in all three elections. And somebody asked me if I could pick again, would I have Kamala be president? And if I'm
Come
being
on.
honest, I have to probably say yes. There would be so
Thank
many
you.
things there would have to be, and my fans will get mad at me for saying that, but there would be so many things I would criticize her and I would disagree with, but I think there would be less destruction and of our norms and of our branches of government and the judicial system, and that's the stuff that really concerns me. I mean, I don't get so even like, okay, he's going to post insane shit on social media. That's one thing. I'm worried he might at some point defy the Supreme Court, like long term, and the kind of things that would break the system is my bigger concern. And I think Kamala Harris would have been less likely to engage in that directly.
100%. I mean, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, when they were in office, they didn't defy courts or anything like that. I mean, just to be clear, when it comes to defying the Supreme Court, Trump has already done that. When it came to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, they had a 9-0 ruling demanding that he be brought back, and they had to go back to lower courts and demand the Trump administration do so, and they just didn't. They just were
Well,
like,
he
yeah,
did
sorry,
eventually.
we can't do it. It did
He did
eventually,
eventually.
exactly, after many, many, many months. When the Supreme Court orders you do something, you do it. And he just was like, I don't know, maybe. And even he himself in the media was saying, he's a bad guy. He's a terrorist. He deserves to be there. He has MS-13 on his knuckles, which wasn't obviously true. And so I think we're already kind of there. I agree that eventually he did it, but the fact that it took that long and that he was so willing to ignore the Supreme Court for so long, I think is red flag of many.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. So I want to come to Kamala Harris in 2024 because you were involved, you were heavily involved as a proud supporter of Biden Harris, and that's totally your right. But I wonder if your perspective on a few things has changed. So I went back and I was looking. I noticed that you had gotten involved with the kind of, I remember the big Zoom call, the fundraising effort, White Dudes for Harris. And you had posted about this. You had supported the effort. You posted a bunch of pictures like white dudes for Kamala Harris, straight white dudes for Kamala Harris, all this. Do you like, just be honest? Can you look back and admit that's kind of cringe and like that identity style of politics is not effective or compelling?
I mean, it just depends on what angle you're looking at it from. I think if you're trying to rally your base, I think it's incredibly effective. I mean, Kamala Harris had all of these different Zoom meetings where Zoom got broken. They raised millions of dollars because of their Zooms and their ex person for Harris. So I think from like a rallying the base standpoint, it can be very effective. But from necessarily like convincing somebody to vote for Kamala Harris, no, I don't think that's the most effective strategy.
Well, but like she hemorrhaged support specifically among straight white men. And the whole idea behind the straight white men for Harris or whatever, the white dudes for Harris, like the big ad they launched was all about targeting white men, why they should feel comfortable voting for Kamala Harris. And it's like, it's nobody else's business. You can make up your own mind. I'm sure you remember this ad. Um, I think that leaning into identity like that in that tokenizing way, I mean, I think that's one of the things that's alienated Democrats from people. It's just people don't want to be treated like a demographic box. And I wonder, would you do that again? Would you still brand yourself as like straight white men for Harris, or would you just focus on the substance? Because you also did that, but then this stuff kind of catches a lot of attention as well.
I mean, I think if I could go back before 2024 and do things differently, of course, there'd be many things that I and I think my peers would do differently. I think there has to be a combination in order to win an election and be successful electorally. It's getting eyeballs and then using those eyeballs to convince them to vote for you. So, putting out a 20-page policy document where you go into the intricacies of what you're proposing is not sexy. It's not going to catch anybody's eyeball. But when you have these groups forming and these Zooms happening and these media worthy events, that can really catch some eyeballs and bring people into the fold. And so the goal, at least in my mind when I was doing that, is let's just first get people looking at us. Let's first get people looking at Kamala Harris, and then we'll do some more convincing later with those eyeballs. Whether that was an effective strategy, that's for people to decide. Obviously, things can be done differently, and the election was pretty close despite what Donald Trump says. But if the overall question is should I, or would I have done things differently before 2024, I think every Democrat probably would say yes to that.
But just more generally, like I think I disagree with them strongly on policy stuff, but I think the Bernie Sanders approach of focusing on the economics and the populism and then just promising everyone free shit is much more compelling to people than this is the Black Women for Harris Zoom call. This is the White Harris Zoom call. But even not that, even the like just the identity, everything, the constant statements about this group and that group. I mean, it was a crude ad, but the whole Kamala Harris is for they, them, Trump is for us or for USA or whatever it was. Do you think Democrats should lean out of the identity politics stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also important to point out, though, that, like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of identity politics to begin with, especially when it comes to convincing people. I don't think that goes a very long way. But it is important to point out that this was not necessarily like Kamala Harris's campaign doing this. And Kamala Harris had a much broader, wider message that if she had more opportunity to get out there, I think would have appealed to more people. I mean, she was talking about building 3 million homes in her first 4 years, working with contractors, developers in a capitalist way to get that done, which would be huge for young Americans, young white Americans especially, who are trying to buy homes and can't afford that right now. They got promised the American dream. They don't have that. She was talking about extending or expanding the business tax credit to make it easier for them to get off the ground and have to pay less taxes. I don't have to go down the laundry list. I mean, she had a broad policy position. So the identity politics, the this for Harris, that for Harris, it's not even the biggest part of the campaign. And if we're being honest, I don't think that necessarily had a role in like her losing, for example.
Yeah, I do agree with you that Kamala Harris, in the very brief campaign that she was able to have, because obviously Biden dropped out very short notice, she did not lean into identity politics during the campaign. You're absolutely correct. But it was more the imprimatur of the Democratic apparatus and party in the previous 5 years. I think it's hard to deny that they leaned into identity politics pretty strongly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Democratic Party does have a history of identity politics. And that's something that Kamala Harris wrote about in her book. And she made clear on the campaign trail that she would never lean into that. I mean, when Donald Trump called Kamala Harris half black, for example, Kamala Harris made a point to not emphasize her identity and kind of respond to the kind of gross nature of the comment instead. And so I think that was part of the learning process for the Democratic Party. I think we're learning more about that and what appeals to people. But I think the whole identity politics thing and really leaning into that and thinking that's effective is kind of in the past now.
Well, I wonder if you think Democrats. So one of the most toxic. I have a real issue with how the Biden administration approached DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. In particular, equity as opposed to equality. Right, in the sense that I am not one of these far right types who thinks diversity is bad, who's going to attack Kash Patel for wishing people a happy Diwali. None of that. But when you had, for example, President Biden openly saying, I'm only going to consider a woman for my vice president. Male candidates are just going to be excluded by nature of their gender. When you had him say with Ketanji Brown Jackson in the Supreme Court, I'm only going to pick a black woman as my Supreme Court. Everyone else is disqualified by their race, virtue of their race or gender. I think that's a very divisive and frankly kind of reverse discriminatory way of approaching identity issues. One, do you agree or do you stand by that? And then two, do you think the Democrats are moving away from it?
I actually disagree. I think that when you have a system like we have right now, let's just use the Supreme Court because you brought up Ketanji Brown Jackson, right? Um, there has never been a black woman on the Supreme Court. And I think what shapes judicial view is your education and how you learned about the law, but also your upbringing. And so Ketanji Brown Jackson, as a black woman in America, has a unique experience on that court that nobody else can attest to. And I think bringing these unique perspectives to these court cases that affect different groups differently is actually really helpful and can give not only the court a different perspective, but the American people a different perspective on how we approach these really serious legal questions moving forward. So
but why
I have no
couldn't we
problem.
just have picked her, though, from, say, I'm going to pick the best person for the job, and I pick Ketanji Brown Jackson? She was qualified. He could have just picked her in an open meritocratic process rather than first explicitly conditioning the selection on race and gender.
Because President Biden was making a similar point that I'm making right now, that our judicial system should have different backgrounds, different experiences, different approaches to the law than what we currently have right now. And I think it's a somewhat stain on the United States that we've never had a black woman on the Supreme Court before who has a unique experience. Black women historically have had a vastly different experience than black men, for example, especially during slavery, when they were targeted even more so. So having these experiences, growing up in America as a black woman, I think that's a point that President Biden wanted to emphasize. And having a diverse coalition on the court, especially a court that represents so many people of color in this country, and of course, white Americans as well, is useful. And so, he could have just picked her and that would have been fine. And she is incredibly qualified, incredibly educated. But I appreciate that Biden made the point that actually diverse experience, diversity period on the court is actually a good thing.
So I think the other way of looking at that is to say that actually it's unfortunate that now, because of the way Biden approached it, the first Black woman Supreme Court justice will be viewed as a DEI hire, because he specifically said, I'm only picking a Black woman. And that wouldn't have been better to let her break that glass ceiling. And I agree with you. It is a stain on the history of the United States that it was racist and sexist for so long, and people were locked out of these positions of power. But wouldn't it have been so much more powerful if that glass barrier had been broken without this lens of like reverse discrimination attached to it?
No, I don't necessarily think so. I don't think that if you put it this way, I think if you look at Ketanji Brown Jackson as a DEI hire, I'm not saying this to you directly, more to the MAGA base, you're just not super informed on her qualifications, right? I mean, somebody who has the background and experience that she does can't possibly be looked at as somebody who has maybe less experience or was picked simply because of the color of her skin. President Biden can do two things at once. He can pick a highly qualified candidate who also he wants to be somebody that comes from a different background than most of the people on the court. And I don't think there's going to be any stain on her legacy. I just think that her being there is a great achievement for President Biden, a great achievement for the country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse on this. I just think we're at odds. I would have liked to see that go. And I think that that kind of approach is part of what's alienated Democrats from the white male demographic.